Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone attending the Planning Committee meeting today, especially those in the public gallery and anyone watching the meeting via the webcast. To the members of the public gallery, I would like to remind you that this planning meeting is being broadcast live over the internet, so there's no need for any other filming of the meeting to take place. This meeting is available to view online now and in the future. Committee members, please be aware that we are all on camera and you may be visible on screen when people around you are speaking, and please remember to speak clearly into your microphones. We welcome the use of the Welsh language at meetings. I have had no request for people to speak Welsh today, so this meeting will be conducted in English only. Please can all mobile phones and other noisy devices be put on silent. If there is an emergency alarm, please follow the green signs and go to the ground floor of the Civic Centre car park. Thank you. I'd like to start by asking the officers to introduce themselves. Perhaps we'll start with you, Tim, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tim James. I'm the Chief Legal Officer for the Council.
I'm Chris Slade, Senior Democratic Services Officer.
Good afternoon, I'm Richard Lewis, Head of Planning.
I'm Paul Wielden, Group Leader, Highway Development Control.
I'm Mark Strickland, Land Drainage Officer for Torfaen.
Rebecca McAndrew, Principal Planner Development Management.
Craig Mead, the Council's Planning Policy Officer.
Thank you. Right, we'll start the agenda. Item 1, attendance and apologies. Any apologies, Chris?
Yes, Chair, we've received apologies from Councillors Stuart Ashley, Faye Jones, Jason O'Connell and Louise Shepherd.
Thank you. Do members know of anyone else's apologies? No. Thank you. Declarations of interest. We'll go over to Tim James for advice, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can I remind all members that where they do have declarations of interest, they should record those at the appropriate point in the attendance register. There's a sheet there, as you'll know, for recording of declarations of interest. The only interest I'm aware of, Chair, is in relation to Councillor Evans. It's in relation to item 4 on the agenda. Councillor Evans, I understand you have a personal and prejudicial interest in relation to that item because a son of yours attends one of the affected schools. That said, there's been a dispensation granted by the Ethics and Standards Committee, and therefore you're entitled to stay and take part in the debate and vote on that application in those circumstances. Is that correct, Councillor Evans?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from any other members, please? Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tim. Item 3, minutes of the Planning Committee meeting.
Excuse me, Chair. There was apologies off Jason this morning. Jason O'Connell.
I think Chris did mention Jason's apologies. Thank you, Lenny. Item 3 on the agenda, minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, 26th of June. Could someone move them as a true record? Thank you. Any comments or questions on page 1? Or page 3 as it is in the report, page 4 and page 5? No? Right, thank you. Item 4 on the agenda, which is planning application 18/P/0260, and it's on pages 9 to 52. And the proposal is hybrid application comprising full application for a proposed sixth form college and associated works, outline application for A3 units, B1 office block and C1 hotel uses. And it's cited at the former Merita, Grange Road, Cwmbran. And Rebecca McAndrew is going to give us a presentation on it. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Chair. As was just said, this is a hybrid application, so full planning consent is sought for a sixth form college at the site, and outline planning consent for a mixed-use scheme with all matters reserved for future consideration. So this is the site, just to show you how it's divided up. So the area in red is where the sixth form college would be, which is the full site, and then the areas outside that is the outline application. On to this. So the application site measures 2.1 hectares and forms part of the wider Eastern Strip Central Strategic Area as designated in the Local Development Plan. Members will recall that the access road into the site was approved by committee in April. This was to enable works to commence on site as soon as possible, given the tight timescales. We understand from the applicant that the timescales for the current scheme are tight, as it's intended to open the college hopefully in September 2020. So you can... Okay, so I'll have to point. So you can see that the Morrison site is to the north, Meritor's to the south, and then you can see Lantern and Grange then to the east, and, oh that's better, thank you, and the Cumbrans Restaurant Cinema Complex here. So the college is this building here. As I said, it's a full application. It's a 5-storey property with including the Endacroft parking, so 4 stories of that would be the college with the parking underneath. The building's 7,690 square metres in floor area, and it would accommodate 1,340 staff and pupils. The mixed-use scheme then, which is the outline, this is an indicative layout. This area here on the indicative layout would be offices, and there would be a minimum of 5 stories, maximum of 6 stories, including the Endacroft parking again. And this here would be a hotel, 4 stories including the Endacroft parking, and then this year would be an A3 unit, either 1 or 2 stories. And then in the centre then, between the college and these other uses, would be a central area of public realm, which would be sort of square where people can congregate. So these are the elevations, and some of them for the college. This is the front elevation, so Morrison's would be here. You'll be looking across here from Grange Road. You can see it's quite a contemporary building. As I said, the 4 stories of teaching accommodation with the Endacroft car park. And this is it, looking from the south, so if you were stood looking from sort of the boundary with Meritor, and again the 4 stories of accommodation and the Endacroft parking. And then here we go, just some computer generated images to give you a general feel of how the college would look. So coming on to some of the key issues associated with the application, the big one with this has been flood risk. So the main Welsh Government guidance for planning on flood risk is TAM 15, and under that, the plans which are published within that, the site falls within the C2 flood zone, which is an area at high risk of flooding, and a 6th form college within TAM is categorised as highly vulnerable development, and the TAM directs development away from highly vulnerable development is directed away from areas that are high risk of flooding normally. That if a proposal can be justified on the basis of 3 tests, then we can consider it. So we consider that the current scheme meets these tests as follows. So firstly, its location is necessary to assist a local authority regeneration initiative or strategy. So the proposed development is critical to the authority's aspirations for that Eastern Strip regeneration area as designated by the local plan. The site is brownfield land, previously developed site, so that meets that criteria, And then the third criteria, that an acceptable flood consequence assessment has been produced. So the flood consequence assessment which has been submitted in support of this application confirms that the flood risk is very low, and an acceptable flood management evacuation plan has been submitted for the college. The flood consequence assessment identifies that the development may slightly increase the flood risk to smaller adjacent areas of land. Both of these areas are owned by Meritor, and Meritor have confirmed that they understand the implications of the proposed development and they don't raise any objections on that basis. So, in the face of that, NRW have confirmed that they do not object to the application on the basis that there is a very low hazard from flooding and a flood management and evacuation plan for the college has been produced. And also NRW was initially concerned regarding the third-party flooding issue, but as Meritor have now written to confirm they're satisfied with the implications, they don't raise any objections on that basis. They've also indicated that the flood risk maps are due to be updated in October, and it's likely that the majority of the site would be removed from the C2 flood zone in October. And the authority's highways engineer confirms on the basis of all that information he's satisfied with the proposals as well. As the site is located within the C2 flood zone, and the college is categorised as highly vulnerable development, the authority is obliged to send the application to the Welsh Ministers for consideration, and they will let us know whether they will call the application in. They have 21 days to do this. The application was sent to the Welsh Government last week, so Welsh Government now have until the 8th of August to confirm whether the application will be called in or not. So if a resolution to approve the application is agreed today, the decision for this application can't be issued until either the Welsh Government come back and confirm that there's no call-in, or the 8th of August passes, whichever's the sooner. Highways has been obviously an issue with this site. As I said before, I'll show you on here, the access road running in off St David's Road across Grange Road into the site has previously been approved. The full application for the college would include 122 car parking spaces, and the indicative layout for the outline element proposes 95 spaces combined for the A3 and hotel use, and 135 spaces for the hotel. This level of parking is lower than our standards, but because it's a sustainable site, so the town centre is just within walking distance, the bus station's within easy walking distance, and the railway station, our highways engineer considers that this is a sustainable site, so it's acceptable to lower the standards for this location. There are trees to be removed as part of this development along Grange Road, and there's a hedge along the front of the industrial site, but the removal of these trees was previously approved as part of the access application, and these trees will be checked for bat roots before they're removed. And as part of that previous application as well, we secured mitigation for the loss of those trees. Obviously, this is previously an industrial site, so there are contamination issues associated with that. And both NRW and the environmental health officers have confirmed that, subject to appropriate conditions, they're happy that this scheme is now acceptable in terms of contamination issues. So if I just skip along, so just some photos now. So that's the looking down towards the Meritor part of the southern boundary of the site. That's looking in off the western boundary into the site, the railway behind. This is taken off the walkway over from the cinema, just looking across there, across the site. And again, there you can see the relationship between Morrison's and the application site. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. Before I open it up to the floor, I'd like to ask Richard to clarify the recommendations that you have to come to, for this application. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. You heard Rebecca refer to the requirement that we have to refer the application to the Welsh Government. That's been done. Therefore, we can't issue any consent until Welsh Government confirms that they do not wish to call the application in. So just to clarify what we're asking members to do, we're asking members to resolve to approve the application, subject to Welsh Government confirming that they are not going to call the application in, and that then I be issued with delegated powers to issue the decision notice, the approval, again subject to Welsh Government not calling in. But because we've got a few weeks to then, also to grant me delegated powers to amend or add to the conditions as necessary over the next couple of weeks. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions on the clarity part of it? No. I've got Councillor.
Who was asking?
Oh, right. Who?
Thank you, Chair. This has gone through quite a few approvals already to date. It was approved by the Executive Committee and it's already been approved by Council this morning. In full Council this morning, they said that there's been a request for increased funding is going to the Welsh Government. This morning Council approved its commitment to meet the shortfall in the future funding. But in addition to the monies coming from, extra monies coming from Welsh Government, it also said that Coleg Gwent would have to meet a further demand for £1 million to cover the equipment and furniture and all the rest of it. So shouldn't there really be two conditions in our recommendation? That the confirmation that the Welsh Government do not intend to recall and confirmation that we're going to get the additional funding through from the Coleg Gwent?
Who I don't think the condition, the budgetary part of it doesn't come to planning. I'll be corrected if I'm wrong by Tim and Richard.
Well, I imagine Richard may want to comment, Chair, but my take on it is that we're dealing with the planning regulatory function here this afternoon, and that's the only thing we are looking at, and other considerations in relation to whoever the council may be acting in partnership with on this matter, and any budgetary elements that relate to that, and any issues around the legal deals connected with the acquisition of the site, etc., are not matters for this committee this afternoon. But they're clearly matters, I know the point you're making, Councillor Bevan, they clearly matters that were in minds of members this morning at full council, and obviously they are conditioned, if you like, but they won't be conditioned in the form of this committee. They will be conditioned in the terms of the agreements and dealings that are ongoing with Welsh Government and Coleg Gwent, separately to what we're looking at today.
Thank you, Tim. Do you want to come in, Richard, and add anything?
No, I need to say I agree with that, yeah,
Oh, right.
from a planning point of view.
We did come to an agreement this morning anyway, Hugh, so I mean it shouldn't really be brought up at this meeting now. The next one on...
Well, what is meant then by the expression calling the application? You said the Welsh Government, you've waited written confirmation from them that they do not intend to call the application in. What is meant by that terminology, calling the application in?
Yeah, Richard will explain that. It's not about the...
It's specifically a planning requirement. There's a direction in place whereby if any development is within a C2 floodplain, we have an automatic duty then to refer that to the Welsh Government. It's only a planning regulation, not anything else. So this just relates to the planning requirement to do that. So the Welsh Government will consider whether they feel that the flooding consequences are such that they would want to call the application in, or that they consider they're happy for the authority to deal with the planning application itself. But it only relates to the planning application. Yeah. Yes, yeah.
Okay, here we're okay with that now. Thank you. Steve, you wanted to come in?
I've got a couple of questions there. Will this building for the Sixth College now be the final design? Because since the initial drawings and with the savings, they've now reduced it. So is that the first question? The second one, will the contamination will have any impact on the stream behind? The third one, what are we doing to eliminate the Japanese knotweed? And the fourth one, where you said you've got the congregation for the hotel for people from the college and everything else. What is in place to stop any gatherings in the evenings, particularly for antisocial behaviour? Because just by Morrison's, there's been a lot of issues with antisocial behaviour. And are we going to be moving it from there to there? That's my question.
So, as I explained, the planning application is a full application for the school, so we're actually approving these drawings in front of us today, or you would be. It doesn't mean that there may be minor amendments or other amendments that came in the future, but as we are today, this is the scheme as it stands. In terms of contamination and the stream nearby, there's conditions put on the consent that relate to unforeseen contamination if that comes, and there's also been assessments submitted as part of the application, so our environmental health officers and NRW are satisfied that if those conditions are attached to the consent, it would safeguard against that. And then in terms of antisocial behaviour, we haven't had any comments from the police in terms of the scheme, but obviously when the most of the public realm is within the outline application, so when that comes forward, we would consult the police then and get their comments back then in terms of measures that could be included in the detailed design to try and mitigate against that antisocial behaviour. There was something. Thanks.
The only concern is we've had antisocial behaviour, just by Morrison's, and we don't want to take it from there to this new build. It'll affect the area. We're trying to eliminate the antisocial behaviour from that area. So hopefully this isn't going to bring any more or move them from that spot.
Well, the scheme that's coming forward is a mixed-use scheme, and generally if there's more people about and more activities, so if there was a restaurant or a cafe and the hotel, there's more people about, which would sort of limit that sort of antisocial behaviour. So there's the eyes, and so that's the theory. But yeah.
The reason I said that, there'll be a lot of vehicles congregating, coming in and out. That was my concern when they're meeting.
I mean, it's something to consider at the detailed stage when the police would hopefully give us more advice on how to deal with that.
Okay, Steve? I mean, we are just looking at the college today.
Yeah, there's two invasive species on the site, and we've got a condition on the proposed that would ask for a methodology to deal with both of those, which would be agreed with our ecologists then before commencement of development.
Ronnie?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Rebecca, for that. Just a couple of questions. My main worry about this site is the traffic. We know it's been brought up, and for the size of it with the hotel, and we know St David's Road, we know the problems there at the moment. On some days it's horrendous there, but Cross Keilor comes up, everybody coming to Morrison's. I know I've had my car written off on that roundabout for somebody not watching where they're going, and the amount of traffic and what usage on that road is a question for Paul. The impact on that road coming in and out, I just have great concerns about that. And another one, I mean, we were talking about flooding. I've never used the word flooding used so much in an application before. It's new, is it? So where would the risk of flooding? You mentioned just a stream, because I've lived there all my life. I would never know that be flooded. It was Meritos. Has there ever been a flood before? It's just the risks you have to put into it, is it?
Should I just explain from there's development advice maps now online from NRW produced them, and these development advice maps show where the flooding areas are and what zones they're in.
So it picks
and
up.
the TAN 15 that Rebecca mentioned is simply that where they're picked up, you need to either not develop it at all in certain circumstances, or produce a flood consequences assessment that evaluates in more detail what that actually means and what mitigation measures are required. So it is across the whole borough.
Yeah.
But this one in particular.
It's only because I've never heard the word flooding so much in applications before, and I thought, oh, what's going on? Yeah, but my main concern, as Paul will know, is the highway structure there, because nothing's been altered there. How are we going to alleviate any problems there, Paul?
Do you want to come in first, Paul? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Net. Members will be aware that there was always an issue around this particular area, and what I've got to say is that there always are in town centres at peak times. I mean, when you look at this particular area, you do get a Saturday peak, you get a Friday evening peak, and generally throughout the rest of the day it operates quite well, actually. And from my standpoint, from a highways aspect, you've always got to try and think, well, yeah, you will get peaks at junctions, at roundabouts, at peak times. We look at the accident records in particular areas and personal injury accidents. And I've got to say this, that since the Morrison scheme, the accident record, if you look at it now, as opposed to prior to Morrison's going there, the accident record is actually better. Some will say because they go around the roundabout slower, but slow is good. My main thing with this is you're always going to get peak traffic anywhere, wherever you go. You go to Cardiff, you go to Newport. Some places you can't move for hours on end. This is nowhere like that, but I share your concerns. There is traffic there. And we did a model, a VISM model ourselves as a highway authority, and we added this to the VISM model. And although it shows, it will get worse, it's not significantly worse. And there are variations in peak times and peak hours, and my view was that really when you're looking at applications such as this, you should be looking to cater for the pedestrian, because that is traffic as well. And I think that this is located in such a good sustainable location that it is good for the bus station, the railway station. It's good for the town centre, close to all other car parking areas, close to the car parking area for this particular development. So overall a good sustainable location. If you look at it in theory and what the government are telling us, is because it is in such a good place, people won't use their cars so much. I've got a different view sometimes, but I'm not overly concerned about the traffic in this particular area. I take your point, and other people see it the same as you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Can I ask Mark Strickland now to come in and explain the flooding issue?
I think that's been answered, Chair.
Oh, okay then. I thought you'd like to hear Mark's side of it. Right. So you don't want to, Mark? No, right, okay. Who you wanted to come in again?
Thank you, Chair. When I came in before, it was just solely about the recommendation. I haven't asked any questions yet, other than on the recommendation. It's stated about the level of the car parking provision being lower than standard. With that being said, is there going to be adequate provision for people coming in on bicycles and bicycle storage? That was my first question. And the concern I have got with this is with regards to water and sewerage. The report states that there's Welsh Water, there's two main water pipes going across the site. Want to know whether those are going to be diverted, reallocated, and I want to know about the sustainability of the water supply and the sewerage, particularly dealing with waste water, grey water and the sewerage. Obviously, if we're looking to have a hotel there and the college accommodating 1,300 odd staff and students. So can I have some more information on what's going to be done to upgrade? Because it's doubtful that the existing sewage system would be adequate.
Right. Do you want, Paul, do you want to come in first? Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Councillor Bevan. There's cycling stands indicated within the development, and they are close to the actual door to the college. I think, if I remember right, there was 64 spaces, 62, which is quite good. Also, there's I don't know if you're aware, but there are really good cycling routes to the college, and the cycle route actually, when we did the Morrison's development, we included for a Toucan crossing on Ed Logan Way, and then that links into the Morrison's development. So yeah, there's good provision for cycle stands within the site.
Thank you, Paul. Rebecca, do you want to come in now?
Yeah, I just wanted to come in and reiterate that it was 62 spaces, and at the moment they're shown to be here. There are some concerns that whilst they're close to the access, they could sort of hinder how this whole public realm works. So we've actually added a condition into any consent granted to agree the exact location, so they may be sort of shifted around, not necessarily there in the end, but we'd still be looking for that level of provision. In terms of the drainage issues that you raised, we've conditioned that a full drainage scheme be submitted to and approved before the commencement of development, which would be looked at by Mark and Welsh Water, and they would have to approve it. And of course then they'd have to go through building regs who would look at the exact details of that and have to be satisfied with that as well. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, who?
Sorry, Chair. Are there the two main pipes going to be resited then, are they? Or rerouted? The two main pipes, water pipes that are there at the minute, they're going to be rerouted? Because obviously it says in the report that it's a statutory requirement that Welsh Water have got to have access to these. That's where I'm coming at with that, Chair.
Do you want to add anything, Rebecca, to that?
Yeah, it would be up to the applicants to discuss the exact arrangements of that with the Welsh Water directly and come to an agreement between themselves. But we can't control that under the planning consent. We can condition a drainage scheme, but that would be outside our remit.
I got Neil and then Janet.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was looking through the report, and I did have some things about the parking, but I can't seem to find anything about any parking for taxi ranks. Will that be made available for the offices and for the would there be any sort of for the hotel? Would there be any sort of taxi rank spaces for taxis?
We'll see what Paul has to say now. Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, thank you. There are taxi ranks within the town centre. What normally happens, say somebody in a hotel wants a cab or whatever, they ring up the cab company and the cab comes straight to the door. So there's not necessarily a need for taxi ranks outside individual premises like this. It's the norm that you would call a private hire cab. They would come to the door, you would get in, and they would take you to your to where you needed to go. So it's not often at all that you would see a taxi ranking by individual developments. They normally taxi ranks normally located in town centres. Thank you.
Okay, Neil, would you turn your mic off, please? Thank you. Janet, would you like to come in now?
Just a quick question. I noticed Network Rail have raised some issues. Have we taken into consideration all their requirements within our plans, and is there anything detrimental that they could come back to us on?
Yeah, we've looked at the Network Rail comments, and we've also put an advisory note on for the applicants to have a copy of those to make sure that they're complying with all the required, where issues are outside the planning realm, that they would, the applicant would be made aware of those concerns and would address those directly themselves. Thank you.
Right, any more questions or comments from members? Would somebody like to move? Seconder? Thank you. So would you like to take us through what we've decided now? You know, you clarified it in the beginning.
Yep.
Could you repeat that for members so we know exactly where we are?
So if members resolve to approve the application, nothing will happen immediately, but on the basis that Welsh Government write to us and say that they do not wish to call the application in, you're also giving me then delegated powers to issue the consent, but to add or amend any conditions as necessary. If Welsh Government confirm that they do wish to call in the application, then that means that jurisdiction for the decision passes to Welsh Government, and we would no longer be responsible for making the decision. Is that okay? Yeah?
Right, so shall we vote on that now? Everyone in favour? 4? 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, I think that's unanimous. Anyone against? Any abstentions? No, that was unanimous. So that application has been approved, and as you said, the clarity you brought to us, I'm sure we all understand it now. And that concludes the meeting. Thank you all for your attendance.